Welcome to our third webinar, which is all about managing worries about change and starting college. My name is Caroline Gibbs. I'm a clinical psychologist with the Further Education Wellbeing Service. We are an NHS service with 5 mental health professionals based across all 4 of the STCG colleges. So that's Kingston, Merton, Carshalton and South Thames. And we're also based in Croydon and Richmond colleges. We know that starting college can feel daunting and many students report feeling nervous or worried in their first few weeks. This session will discuss how to cope with these feelings and how to approach change and new challenges with confidence. So today we're going to look at what anxiety is, the fight, flight, freeze response, building a personal toolbox of coping techniques, and where to go for support at your college. So let's start by looking at what anxiety is. Anxiety is an emotional experience. We might feel anxiety in our bodies or as a result of worried thoughts. Fear and anxiety are normal human emotions that we all experience, and we know that anxiety can increase during times of change or uncertainty. So starting college is a really common time to feel feelings of nervousness or anxiety alongside other feelings, perhaps such as excitement. This video helps us to understand what happens in our bodies when we start to experience anxiety, and it looks at 3 components: the fight, flight, freeze response. The fight, flight, freeze is where our body releases adrenaline, causing physical symptoms such as a fast heart rate, feeling hot or sweaty, or needing the loo. You might recognise some of these symptoms when you start to feel stressed, overwhelmed, or anxious. We can get caught up in negative thinking patterns, which makes us feel that we're unable to cope with certain situations, and we might start to avoid situations that we feel anxious about. Let's have a look at the video now.
You know what anxiety feels like. We all do. Everyone experiences anxiety in some way or another. It's something that connects all of us together. Why we feel anxiety and what it really is, that may surprise you. Without anxiety, we'd all be in serious trouble. As soon as your brain senses you're in danger, a little piece of it, called the amygdala, kicks in. It gets your body ready to react. That could mean fight, run away, or shut down. It's called the fight, flight, or freeze response. This reaction goes back millions of years to our distant animal ancestors. Animals whose amygdalae were more sensitive to danger were more likely to stay alive and off the menu. Over millions of generations, this developed into the system we all know as anxiety. So you see, anxiety itself is not all bad. But when there's no immediate life or death threat, and your amygdala keeps telling your body that you're in danger, that's when anxiety becomes a problem. Your amygdala doesn't know the difference between getting eaten and public speaking or failing a test. Human society has only existed for a relatively short time. It's messy and complicated and confusing, and our amygdalae just haven't had time to catch up. So sometimes, when we're in uncomfortable situations, our brains misread the risk and overreact. Our hearts beat faster and we breathe heavily, pulling more oxygen into our bodies. The muscles in our arms and legs tense up and fill with blood. Our skin perspires to cool us down. This would all be great if we needed to fight or run, but instead, we just feel tense and sweaty. Sometimes our minds go blank and we feel like we can't move or talk. That would be great if we needed to hide. Instead, we just feel stuck. When things trigger our anxiety, sometimes we try to avoid them, like our ancestors avoiding a predator. But that can cause problems when those triggers are important parts of life, like going to school or meeting new people, things that won't just give up and go away. So how does knowing all this help? Well, it starts with remembering what's really going on. There's nothing physically wrong with you. It's just your amygdala trying to tell you it thinks you're in danger, even if it gets confused about how much danger you're really in. Understanding why we feel anxiety is an important step in learning to manage it.
So change can be good, But it's not always easy. As well as physical and social changes, we know that adolescence is a time of huge change in the brain, and the brain doesn't stop maturing until the mid to late 20s. So the next video is to show why teenagers and people during their adolescence are more susceptible to experiencing anxiety than at other points in their lives. Let's have a look.
Between childhood and adulthood, our hormones kickstart a phase of significant change. And while the physical changes of adolescence may be obvious, less visible are changes that these hormones trigger in our brains, which might just be responsible for turning our teenage years into a bit of a roller coaster. Throughout our lives, our brains undergo a process called neural pruning. The synapses through which our neurons communicate are either lost or strengthened, depending on how much we use them. Well-used synapses grow strong, while the weaker ones fade away. It's this process that makes us capable of faster, clearer, and more complex thought as we grow up. But, crucially, pruning happens at different rates in different areas of the brain. By the time we're adolescents, the neural networks that communicate emotion, risk and reward are well developed, while others, which may help us to plan, prioritise, think logically and moderate our social behaviour, are yet to mature. So, a potential mismatch between our emotion and our judgment arises just as our emotional and social worlds are becoming more complex, making an increase in social anxiety quite normal at this time. Researchers at the University of Oxford want to know how this might affect our behaviour as we progress through our teenage years. In a recent study, they focused on the social worries many of us feel as adolescents. When presented with photographs of ambiguous social scenes and asked to imagine themselves in the picture, anxious younger teens were more likely than others to perceive negativity. But while these heightened emotions and the struggle to control them can make adolescence a difficult time for some, it's also a golden time for learning and growth. The adolescent brain is particularly agile and flexible, and as such, it's especially open to new opportunities, new technologies, and new experiences. So while our teenage years may feel pretty weird, they're also pretty wonderful. To explore how your brain develops, visit www.oxfordsparks.ox.ac.uk and tell us what you think on our Facebook and Twitter.
So here's an example of what anxiety might look like when starting college. Josh is 16 years old and has chosen to study a BTEC Level 3 in creative media. He wants to work in TV and film in the future and was really excited about his course. But now he's questioning, did he make the right choice? All his friends went to his old school sixth form. On his first day at college, he feels nervous and he doesn't say much in his first lesson. And when the teacher asks him a question, he doesn't know the answer, so he thinks he looks stupid in front of his new classmates. His hands start to get sweaty, he feels tense, and he thinks he just doesn't want to be there. During a break, Josh leaves college, so he feels instantly more comfortable, but once he gets home, he's missed out on 2 further lessons and getting used to his new class. So this pattern of anxiety impacting our thoughts, feelings, bodies and behaviour is really common. Whilst anxiety can't physically harm us, it really doesn't feel pleasant, and we often want to do whatever we can to get rid of the feeling quickly, just like Josh did. He felt uncomfortable at college and ended up leaving early. So this is a really helpful example of avoidance, and we've highlighted here whilst it keeps a large part in keeping anxiety going. Avoidance helps to relieve anxiety in the short term. So Josh left college, he went home, and his anxiety reduced really quickly. And it's understandable that we want to avoid something that makes us feel unpleasant and uncomfortable. In this example, college was a new place with new people, and it was unfamiliar, whereas home felt safe and comfortable. But what we know is that in the long term, avoiding anxiety-provoking situations simply makes us more anxious, and we begin to feel that we're only going to be safe or able to cope because of avoiding the situation. So whilst Josh managed to stop some of those feelings of discomfort on that day, what happens tomorrow when he goes back into college or the next day after that? Because leaving tends to have an impact on those thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations and behaviours. So how do we learn to face our fears? Here's a kind of a funny video to show what can happen when you gently and slowly start to develop your confidence and face your fears. So what we want to do is face the thing we're afraid of. If you think now about when the last time was that you were nervous about doing something for the first time, what happened once you've done it a few times? Did you get used to it? What's it like now versus the first time you ever did it? Sometimes it works when we jump in the deep end and face the hardest challenge first, but often that can leave us feeling a bit overwhelmed. So what we tend to do is break your goal down into smaller, more manageable steps and build up to facing the fear that way. And this allows you to build up confidence with every step achieved. If you'd like to learn some ways to manage anxiety and face your fears, our NHS Wellbeing mental health practitioner service might be able to help. And we're going to talk about how you can access the service at the college a bit later. So let's think about your personal toolbox now. Imagine a handyman off to work. He's going to need a range of tools in his box for the different jobs he has that day. He might need a hammer, some screws, some glue, or perhaps some other devices, just as we need when we go about our day-to-day lives. We have a range of different situations, activities, and challenges to navigate. And we might need to use different ways and means to do this. So we're going to share some useful techniques that you might want to add to your own personal toolbox. When it comes to our anxious thinking, it can be helpful to remind yourself what happens to our thought processes when we start to experience anxiety, just to slow it down and recognise that the way we're thinking might not always be reflective of the situation. Because when we're anxious, we tend to overestimate the danger ahead and we underestimate our ability to cope. So let's think about some tools to manage unhelpful thoughts. It might help to remind yourself that thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are our ideas, opinions, and beliefs about ourselves and the world around us. They include the perspectives we bring to any situation and allow us to have a point of view. So in that sense, thoughts tend to be our opinions. An opinion is what a person thinks or believes something. It is not necessarily based on fact, because a fact is something that you can prove to be true or false. We tend to fall into a trap where we think our thoughts are facts. Actually, there are often many ways of viewing or thinking about a situation and not just one true way. So whilst we can't always control what happens to us, we can control how we think and respond to situations. It's important to notice when unhelpful thoughts arise, because these thoughts can leave us feeling low, demotivated or worried. And there's something that we can do something about them. So catch it, check it, change it can be a really helpful technique. So catch it, what am I thinking? How is it making me feel? Check it, what's the evidence for that thought? And change it. How would someone else see this? What would I say to a friend? Let's look at this video and find out a bit more.
Our thoughts, feelings and behaviours continually affect each other, and it's easy to develop negative patterns where unhelpful thoughts lead to unhelpful feelings and actions. Sometimes this can become a vicious cycle. Many of us don't realise that we can influence this process and that this can improve our mental health. The best way to deal with these unhelpful thoughts is to recognise them, challenge them, and see if you can replace them. Some people call this the catch it, check it, change it approach. With practice, this can help us look at perceived problems from a different perspective. For example, you might be worried about an important task you have to do at work, convinced it will go wrong and everyone will think you're a failure. Rather than immediately accepting this thought and feeling even worse, take a moment to catch it and check it. Ask yourself whether there's good evidence for it, or if there are other explanations. Try thinking about what you would say to a friend who was thinking this way. Finally, see if you can change the thought for a more positive one. Maybe, I'm prepared, I've put a lot of work in, and I'm going to do my best. Sometimes you will be able to change the thought to a positive one, but don't worry when at other times you can't. There are no right or wrong answers. It's about learning to think more flexibly and be more in control. By catching the thought, checking it, and seeing if you can change it, with practice, you can help break the negative cycle.
Another tool to help us when we're feeling anxious or worried is trying to stay present. So our bodies are here right now in this room, but sometimes our focus, thoughts or attention will be changing. We might be thinking about the future, worrying about what will happen tomorrow or next week. Or perhaps we're stuck in the past, overthinking about what happened yesterday, this morning or even last year. These thoughts can make us feel anxious or affect our mood here in the now. The idea is to try and bring our mind and our thoughts into the present moment to stop these difficult feelings from affecting us. Simple mindfulness exercises can help to keep us focused and present in the here and now. This simple breathing exercise that we're going to do together now can be extremely effective in calming the fight, flight, freeze response, which sends a signal to our brain to say we're not in danger and can help those uncomfortable feelings disappear.
Let's begin this brief mindful moment by finding a comfortable seat. Feet flat on the floor, hands uncrossed. Take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Now we are going to practice a mindfulness activity called mindful eyes. Look at the various objects around you. Notice their shape, their color, their texture. Now notice the space between them, the light and the shadows, the brightness or darkness of the surrounding space. Maybe even notice something you have never seen before. Now take one last breath, breathing in, breathing out, and slowly return to the room.
The best thing about these sorts of exercises using our breath is that you can do it anywhere and often without anybody noticing. And there's loads and loads of examples of visual exercises like this on YouTube if you just have a quick search. Flow activities can help to change our mood as we get into the flow and focus on what we're doing, leaving us feeling content. Some examples of things that students have said help to get them into a focus and flow are playing on the PlayStation, listening to music, watching TV or YouTube clips or a funny film, spending time with pets, maybe doing something physical like playing football, doing a workout, skateboarding, or perhaps something creative like drawing or painting or baking. Jasmine enjoys making cupcakes and finds the process really calming, so trying out a new recipe might help you to relax too. Or someone who likes football might go out and practice kick-ups to de-stress after a busy day. Especially if you've been sat down a lot at college, getting out and about, moving your body can really help. Or someone who likes art might need to get a bit creative. Everyone's different. It's all about finding out what works for you and do more of it. So far, we've looked at things you can do as an individual, but what we know that one of the key factors in maintaining good mental health is about ensuring we have the right support from others. So we always start with thinking about someone's backup team. Who can support you in different ways during your transition to starting college and beyond? And it's about knowing what type of support different people might be best at giving you and utilising this at times of change or uncertainty. So you might have someone who's really good at helping you with emotional support, maybe talking, giving you a hug. You might have someone else who's really good at offering you practical support or solutions. And maybe there's someone else who you always go to who you know will make you feel good. You can have a laugh and have some fun with them. In terms of support at college, every college has a student services department. You can walk in at any time and ask for a chat with somebody there. They're there to provide you with support and can link you in with all sorts of services that are right for you. So do drop in at any time if you want some information, advice or support. If you're based at one of our STCG colleges, you can call them on the numbers here on the screen or email them directly. So take a photo of this screen if you haven't got these details to hand. And if you're based at a different college, the best thing to do is check out your student services department and they will be able to give you support there. And we can't stress enough, seek support early. Don't leave it until everything feels overwhelming. Our free NHS Wellbeing support team offer between 6 and 12 weekly sessions to help you with anxiety, low mood, anger, overthinking, low motivation and sleep difficulties. And if you're struggling with your mental health or feel that you might benefit from some extra support, speak to your personal tutor or student services and they can link you straight into our service for the right sort of help. Remember, we're based in 6 colleges across London: Merton, Carshalton, Wandsworth and Kingston, Richmond and Croydon. Thanks for joining us today and do check out the other webinars that are available on our YouTube channel, and we wish you the best of luck with your start to college. Thank you.